Hello and welcome back to Investing with Craig. If you've seen me on my Cruising Off Duty channel, you know I used to put a few episodes on there every once in a while where I kind of forewarned that I think there's a day of reckoning coming with this crazy money printing that's going on. This, let's just throw caution to the wind and who cares about our debt levels, just print. And I think there's only one thing that can really come of that is the eventual massive amounts of inflation we're going to see in the future. So of course, my first few episodes were kind of the foundation of what do you do to protect your wealth in a high inflationary environment, especially with low interest rates on things like bonds. And we talked about investing in gold, investing in silver, and getting into some mining companies, which is a leverage play on gold and silver. That is the foundation because that's something you need if we have that absolute meltdown. But now I want to get into a topic that's way more exciting. It is Bitcoin, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Now, this is the future in my mind. Gold and silver, great. Have that physical gold and silver in your possession. If Armageddon comes, you're going to need that silver for barter. If, heaven forbid, inflation goes to 15, 20, 30, 100%, you're going to need something that inflates or goes up in value more than your purchasing power goes down. And I think gold and silver have proven that over hundreds of years. But we've never had anything as interesting as cryptocurrencies. Now, I want to start with today being Bitcoin because it's the OG. It's the original coin that started it all. There's now 9,000 crypto coins out there. They're not all good, but the one that's got mass adoption, tons of media coverage, and is the coin that I guess if you weren't sure what to get into, it would be the coin to start with. But I know a lot of people don't understand blockchain technology, encryption, Bitcoin. So this video is for you. This is going to walk you through it in layman's terms. So hopefully at the end of this, you're going to understand a bit more about blockchain and how cryptocurrencies work. If you do find that, then take this video, forward it to your friends and family, and hopefully they'll understand it as well. I think it is the future of currency, and let's get into this. Okay, the first question is, what is Bitcoin? The next question I almost always get is, who created it? How many coins are out there? How do you mine Bitcoin? Because you hear about that all the time. And the last one is Bitcoin in a bubble at the super high prices you hear in the media right now, or are we just getting started? Okay, let's start with what is Bitcoin. Now, a lot of times when you try and explain Bitcoin to people, it sounds like you're trying to explain particle physics. I've tried to get this as layman's as possible, but the first screen might be a little bit daunting. There's a lot of words here, but we're going to walk you through it. Bitcoin is a digital currency. It's decentralized. There's no bills to print or coins to mint. There's no government, no institution like a bank or any other authority that controls it. Owners are anonymous. Instead of using names, addresses, or social security numbers, Bitcoin connects buyers and sellers through an encryption key. Since it isn't controlled by a government, it can't be created out of thin air. There's a finite number, as there will only ever be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins in existence. So far, 18.5 million Bitcoins have been created, and the only way to create new Bitcoins is a process called mining, where powerful computers track transactions and solve complex mathematical questions to compete for new Bitcoins. So that is it in a nutshell. That's what Bitcoin is. So we're going to get into more detail now. So what are Bitcoin's features? Of course, we talked about this already. There's the limited supply. 21 million Bitcoins is all there ever is, unlike government fiat currency where they just print more every year all the time. And there's who knows how much. And this year alone, they've increased the money supply by 40%. That's just insane. So that's why I say a day of reckoning is coming. It's non-government backed, so it can't be printed like the fiat currency. It's purely digital. This currency can be transferred across the globe in any size denomination without any government intervention or any banks being involved. So let's just talk about the one immutability. That's the one where I think that could be good, it could be bad, depending on your side of the transaction. So immutability just means that once a transaction is completed, it can't be reversed. So let's think about that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a good thing if you are a vendor and somebody buys something from you and they send you Bitcoin. They can't later talk to Visa or somebody else and say, oh, you know what, I didn't like it, or I wasn't explaining the right thing or whatever. I want to cancel that transaction. And the vendor gets some sort of weird cashback request from Visa and all this stuff. There is no central person involved, no bank, no Visa, no nothing. So if somebody gives you Bitcoin for something, the transaction is finalized. Now, they could obviously take you to small claims court or whatever else, but there's no way for an intermediary to get involved and say, oh, and we're going to investigate this transaction, so we're going to take the money back for now and think about it. That doesn't happen because it's a peer-to-peer, and as this says, once the transaction is gone, It's gone. It's been put in the ledger and it's finalized. So that's another thing that could be a bad side of this. If you meant to send your buddy a Bitcoin to his electronic wallet, and you send it to what you thought was his wallet, but you wrote down the code number wrong, so you sent it to some random wallet out there, who knows who owns it, you can't go down to the bank and say, oops, I put the wrong code in, can you please reverse that transaction? No. It's peer-to-peer, there's no central processing, so it's gone. So that's the one thing that I think could be considered a negative, is that it's so unreversible, but it is what it is. And the last thing is divisibility. It can support microtransactions. One Bitcoin is actually divided into 8 decimal points, and the smallest part of this denomination is called a Satoshi. It's 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So think of it this way. A lot of people go, oh, how much is Bitcoin? 60,000 US dollars a coin? I can't afford to buy a Bitcoin. You don't need to buy a Bitcoin. You could get onto your Webull account or your Robinhood account and put up $10 on Bitcoin because you buy X number of Satoshis. So instead of saying I bought a Bitcoin, you could say I bought 500,000 Satoshis. So it's very good in the fact that it can be, the little increments are very manageable for anybody at any price range. The other thing too is a lot of vendors won't accept debit or credit for a purchase, let's say less than $1, because for debit, they might get charged 40, 50 cents from the bank just for each transaction. So if you're only buying $1 worth of stuff and they get 50-cent transaction fee, they just lost money on that purchase. Now, some stores will just turn a blind eye to it because they don't want to upset their customers, but some stores will quite clearly say right above the cash register, you can't use your debit card for anything less than like $5. But with cryptocurrency peer-to-peer, you could send 1 Satoshi if you want, which is, I don't know, like less than a cent. So that's a cool feature of cryptocurrencies that normal bank and Visa doesn't have. So there you go. So how does blockchain work? This is the whole crux of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other ones. They all work on a blockchain technology, but Bitcoin was the first to come out with it. So let's throw a little diagram up here. So in Bitcoin, you have a transaction request. That could be a transaction to buy a different cryptocurrency. It could be a transaction just to send the same Bitcoin to another person. So the transaction is requested. A block that represents the transaction is created. That block gets sent into the system. Now, the block is sent into every node on the network. So node is a weird word, but just think of it as every full-time computer that's on there that has been set up as a node is something that's got, at this point, 200 gigabytes of a hard drive available, because what these nodes do is they register every transaction that's ever happened on the ledger ever since it was started in 2009. So they have to have a pretty big hard drive, and they're created as a node to be permanently on the network. Now, every node that's on the network, of course, one could go drop off because of a power failure or something, but every node on the network has to validate it. So that's step 4 here. Nodes validate the transaction. So the transaction doesn't get completed until every node agrees and updates their personal ledger on their hard drive that this transaction happened. So that can take anywhere from seconds to maybe minutes, depending on how busy the network is. So all this work of these nodes doing, all these transaction validations, they get credited with a reward, and it's called proof of work. And that's where we'll talk about mining. Mining comes from this proof of work. Once that's done, the block is added to the blockchain after everybody's validated it, and then the transaction is complete. So who created Bitcoin? And this is where it gets very interesting, very cloak and dagger. I mean, I don't think any other coin has any sort of history like this. So stay tuned to this part. Bitcoin is a digital currency that was created in January 2009. It follows the ideas set out in a white paper by a mysterious and now missing Satoshi Nakamoto. So who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Well, no one knows. It is clear that Satoshi Nakamoto is a pseudonym for an as yet unidentified person or group that created Bitcoin on January 3rd, 2009. He is the person that wrote the white paper explaining Bitcoin and wrote the 31,000 lines of open source code to create the network protocol that would create and facilitate the transfer of Bitcoin. Now, what do we know about Satoshi Nakamoto? Nakamoto, who wrote regularly on message boards, claimed to be a 36-year-old Japanese man. He said he spent more than a year writing the software, driven in part by anger over the recent financial crisis. He wanted to create a currency that was impervious to unpredictable monetary policies as well as the predictions of bankers and politicians. Well, Nakamoto was clearly a cipher, because before the debut of Bitcoin, there was no record of any coder that had that name. He used an email address and a website that were untraceable. In 2009 and 2010, he wrote hundreds of posts in flawless English, and though he invited other software developers to help him improve the code and corresponded with them regularly, he never revealed a personal detail. Then, in April 2011, he sent a note to a developer saying that he had, quote, moved on to other things, and he has not been heard from since. Side note, he wrote using British slang and spelled words using the British spelling, so there's much speculation that he was not, in fact, Japanese. What was Satoshi Nakamoto's motivation? Nakamoto created the currency just a few months after the 2009 global banking collapse, and in an essay he wrote, "The root problem with the conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted to not debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. Banks must be trusted to hold our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction in reserve." How did Nakamoto try to create a safe and secure peer-to-peer currency system? Well, Nakamoto solved this problem by using innovative cryptography. The Bitcoin software encrypts each transaction. The sender and the receiver are identified only by a string of numbers, but a public record of every coin's movement is published across the entire network. Buyers and sellers remain anonymous, but everyone can see that a coin has moved from A to B, and Nakamoto's code can prevent A from spending the coin a second time. The code would allow people to send money directly to each other without an intermediary, and no outside party or government could create more Bitcoins. What do we think happened to Nakamoto? So the question really is, why would Nakamoto, who was such a prolific writer in the message boards and in the cryptographer community, suddenly go silent for a decade? Well, the most likely answer is that he's dead. But perhaps he is in hiding, afraid the government will try to prosecute him for creating a competing and superior currency to the government fiat currency. Others that tried creating a similar digital currency after Bitcoin were arrested and charged. It is illegal to create competing currency according to the government. Just as a side note, if Nakamoto is still alive today, he would be very, very rich. If Nakamoto came out of hiding, what would be his net worth? Well, from his exchanges on the bulletin board, we know that Nakamoto was one of the first to put his computer to work to mine the first Bitcoins by creating the first node. The blockchain ledger shows every transaction, and it shows that there are at least 4 very early crypto wallets assumed to be attributed to him that hold an estimated 950,000 plus Bitcoins, about 4.5% of the total Bitcoins that will ever exist. As far as can be determined, these wallets lay dormant to this day. At today's price of about $60,000 per coin, he would be worth a staggering $57 billion. Is that insane? $57 billion. Now that's why my personal thought is he probably passed away, because with $57 billion, I don't think you should be worried about getting arrested, because you could afford to buy the best lawyers in the world. And as we know, the best lawyers with the most amount of money tend to win cases. So I just don't think anybody could sit quietly by and watch their fortune go to $57 billion and not step forward before now. So every once in a while, though, there's rumor in the Bitcoin community that those wallets get some movement. Usually people are saying that they see coins being deposited in. I don't think anybody's ever said coins will come out. So maybe somebody's just accidentally sent coins in there. Like I said, put the wrong number and sent it to the wrong wallet. Who knows? But every time somebody says that that wallet got some movement, everybody freaks out, because somebody has $57 billion of Bitcoin. And if he did all of a sudden come to light and go, yeah, I'm here, what happens if he tries to dump $57 billion worth of crypto or Bitcoin on the market? It would decimate the price. But let's be realistic here. You could say the same thing about Tesla or any company where the owner founded it or whatever and is like a true patriot of the company. They're not going to dump all their stock at once. That would ruin their own company. And Satoshi, if he ever came forward, he's not going to dump $57 billion of his prized possession on the market and ruin his own crypto. So I don't think we have to worry. So even if he is alive, I think he would be smart enough to only sell out tiny, he's got so much of it, portions of it at a time to not affect the price. So let's hope he's alive, but if he's not, that $57 billion is just going to sit there. How did Satoshi get so many Bitcoins? Is it a rigged game? No, not a rigged game. But you have to keep in mind it's much harder to mine for new Bitcoin today than it was in 2009, when only a small group of people even knew Bitcoin existed, and even fewer were trying to mine for it. Miners verify blocks and add them to the chain, and for that they get a reward. A new block is created about every 10 minutes. And back then, being the miner that created the new block came with a reward for the, quote, proof of work of 50 Bitcoin. Few miners were competing for these rewards. Today, a block is only going to get 12.5 Bitcoin. And there are a lot more miners competing for that same prize. Now, I'm going to explain halving. It's really important. So Satoshi, in the coding, the way it was designed is that every 210 blocks, so it works out to be about 4 years, there's a halving, which means the reward goes down because I guess they figured, or he figured, Bitcoin would go up in value. So you can't give 50 Bitcoin for doing one block when they might be worth a lot of money, which is what's happened today. So every 4 years, they cut in half the amount of reward you get. When it started, you got 50 Bitcoin. 4 years later, it got halved to 25 Bitcoin. There's been another halving since then, so now people only get 12.5 Bitcoin for creating the new block. And in the next halving, it'll go down to 6 1/4 and then 3 1/8, and you get the point. It's going to go down and down and down. It's going to take so long to get that last Bitcoin because as you have and have and have and have, I think the last year will be 2140. And in that last 4-year phase, you're only going to get half a Bitcoin for every block. So by then, Bitcoin could be worth millions per coin, who knows what. But if not, miners aren't going to want to mine it. So you get to the point where it has to be worth more just because there's a less and less supply out there. Also, commonly thought, not only is Satoshi's 950 to a million coins sitting there not being used, but they believe that at the beginning, when these coins were worth so little, people were mining them and leaving them on thumb drives and leaving them on old computers that died and not caring because they thought, oh, I lost $20 worth of Bitcoin or I lost $100 worth of Bitcoin. So they think there's about, in today's dollars, well, there's about 4 million Bitcoin that have not moved and they think are lost. So of the 21 million, about 4 million might be forever gone. Now that Bitcoin's worth $60,000 a coin, people don't tend to lose them. People don't tend to put them on a thumb drive or a cold wallet and throw it in their sock drawer and forget about it, or, leave it in the trunk of their car and something crushes it. Now it's worth like way more than gold's worth. So people guard it with their life. So things don't get lost as much anymore. So this is a little humorous then versus now. So in the beginning, it was so easy to mine. The calculations were so simple because there wasn't a lot of traffic on the net. The computations that were asked to be done were so simple that you could mine with a laptop. Seriously, a laptop. You can't do that anymore. Your laptops aren't fast enough to compete what's going on now. This is a typical modern crypto mining company. They have rows and rows of thousands and thousands of what's called ant miners that do nothing all day but crunch numbers as fast as they can to try and get the next blockchain. So the laptop's not going to compete. You could run your laptop for years and not even get one Satoshi probably, who knows. But it wouldn't be worth the power that it costs to run your laptop. So here's a kind of a funny point. When they first started trying to price Bitcoin, when there was enough people that had them, they were trying to price them back and forth or trying to spend them, you could get 4 Bitcoins for a penny. So you got to remember back to that thing about, the first early miners, when they got a block, they got 50 Bitcoin, which today sounds like crazy amounts of money. Back then, it was worth about 12.5 cents. So when Nakamoto first released the code for Bitcoin, he regularly interacted with the members of the forum called the Bitcoin Talk Forum. Members could see the vision of the peer-to-peer payment system and helped by giving input on how to improve the code. Some started mining coins to help grow the numbers of coins and try and find uses for it. When people first started pricing Bitcoin, as I said, it was about 4 Bitcoins per penny. Now, would you pay 10,000 Bitcoins for pizza? I know I wouldn't. But back then, like I said, Bitcoin didn't have a lot of net worth, and one guy is kind of notorious for what he bought. Anyways, let's just get right to it. The first known commercial transaction using Bitcoin was in May 22nd, 2010, when a coder and forum member, Laszlo Haniec, who had been mining thousands of Bitcoins, found a Papa John's staff member that would accept Bitcoin for pizza. He agreed to pay 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. In interviews in 2020, Laszlo said he was mining Bitcoin and he believed wholeheartedly in the vision of Bitcoin being the future of payments, but almost no one was accepting Bitcoin, so he figured he would grow more interest in the coin by trying to find people who would accept it for payment for goods. He said he would pay 10,000 Bitcoin, a nice round number in his mind, for 2 pizzas. Laszlo said he never expected Bitcoin to rise to the popularity and value so fast. If he knew what he knew now, he probably would not have spent it on pizza. He will always be remembered for this transaction, and May 20th is still called National Pizza Day in the Bitcoin community. Oh, and by the way, at today's Bitcoin prices, that pizza cost him $600 million. Ouch. I don't know how. I don't think I could sleep at night if I found out I gave away $600 million for pizza. So what made Bitcoin become so valuable at nearly $60,000 a coin? Well, the first point is obviously the falling purchasing power of fiat currencies, as the governments of the world seem to all be playing the same game of spend and print, who cares how big our debt is, and everybody sees the writing on the wall that the purchasing power of fiat currencies is going to go down. Obviously, the next point we've mentioned is the frictionless transfer of money or wealth between two parties without an intermediary being involved. Transactions can be any size, they're almost instant, they're 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, and they have very low fees. And this one is the biggest point in my mind. It's the corporate acceptance and adoption. When I bought even in 2018, there was always that is it going to go away? Is the government going to outlaw it? I mean, what do I do with it? If somebody on a crypto exchange doesn't accept it anymore, it's useless, right? Well, now you've got corporations accepting it as payment. Let's just get into it. There's a lot of stuff here. Major banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Silvergate Capital, and more have started investing their capital and their clients' capital in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So that's a major stamp of approval by these big banks. Corporations are starting to invest their unused cash balances in Bitcoin and leaving it on their balance sheet as an asset as they expect it to appreciate in value versus fiat currency. Biggest example that everybody knows about is MicroStrategy, where the owner not only invests all of his money into Bitcoin, but he actually takes loans against the company to buy more Bitcoin. Tesla is the most recent example where Elon Musk invested $1.5 billion of Tesla's cash into Bitcoin, and Galaxy Digital does the same, investing almost all of their free money into Bitcoin. Many payment processors, most notably Visa recently, and PayPal, are accepting Bitcoin as payment, along with many other corporations now accepting Bitcoin as payment for services or products. For example, Tesla is now accepting Bitcoin for you to buy a Tesla, and they are not going to turn it into fiat currency. They're actually going to just hold all the Bitcoins that they get. And many more companies are announcing plans to do the same very soon. And the last point is the ease of which people can now buy Bitcoin. Now, let me just say that back in 2018 when I bought, it was a major pain in the butt, at least as a Canadian, to get cryptocurrency. You couldn't go to your local bank. I couldn't go on my Interactive Brokers. I don't think Interactive Brokers still to this day doesn't let you buy Bitcoin. They'll let you buy Bitcoin futures on the stock exchange, but they won't let you buy Bitcoin. And when I tried to buy, I couldn't just send money directly to one of the crypto exchanges because all my credit cards would deny it. As soon as I tried to put money on these crypto things using a credit card, it just denied it. When I tried to send it from my bank to an exchange, that wouldn't be allowed either. So I had to send it to a bank that the other crypto exchange had so that it would be a bank-to-bank transfer. That's how much of a pain in the butt it was to get money onto a crypto exchange back in only 2018. It was not long ago. So it's been made way easier, and that makes the value of Bitcoin much higher. Many stock trading platforms like Robinhood, Webull, etc. let their clients not only buy stocks, but they can now also buy cryptocurrencies right on their app. Online crypto exchanges are popping up everywhere that makes depositing money from your bank account onto their exchanges quick and easy. Most now accept e-transfers and credit cards for funding your account. So what does the future of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies look like? Well, all I can say is, in my opinion, the future is bright. We're probably only in the first inning of the adoption of cryptocurrencies. In the near future, most payment processing companies and banks will accept Bitcoin and select other large cryptocurrencies as a means of payment and will allow you to deposit these new cryptos in a savings account as an asset. Banks see the exponential growth that they are presently missing out on and will want to join in this generational transformation of what will be widely seen as a superior form of currency. But the one thing I hear all the time from fearmongers is, isn't the government just going to close it down? Aren't they just going to make it illegal and then all the Bitcoin will be useless because we won't be allowed to spend it? Well, I think it's too late for that. I think the genie's out of the bottle. I believe the time for the government to create laws to outlaw Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies would have had to have been done years ago in the infancy of the coin when few people or companies had adopted it. Now that they have allowed companies to list on the stock exchange with the sole purpose of facilitating the mining, exchanging, and investing in cryptocurrencies, they really cannot outlaw it. Once Goldman Sachs and other, quote, too big to fail banks have allowed their high net worth clients to invest in cryptocurrencies, and invest in shares of companies trading in crypto, they can't really go back and say it is now outlawed. Too many big corporations and big political donors would be adversely affected. And I think what's going to happen isn't that the government's going to outlaw it. It's going to be, okay, we can't outlaw it, but if you can't beat them, join them. And I think what's going to happen, there's going to be a Fed coin. I believe the US federal government will come up with its own cryptocurrency, perhaps called the Fed coin. The Chinese government has already created its own cryptocurrency called the digital yuan. It has the same name as their paper money called the yuan, but now the government has its citizens create a government digital wallet. With a government wallet, which of course will be linked to you, they can monitor what you spend and where, and anytime they want to give out stimulus checks like they've been doing lately, or any other sort of aid, they will only do it through the Fed coin into your Fed wallet. They can then track how you spend it and may even put limitations on which vendors can accept Fed coins so that they can make sure that the Fed coins go to the intended purpose of things like food and necessities. These coins could even be encoded with an expiration date so that you have to spend this, quote, free money by a certain date or it disappears. No more taking your stimulus check and investing it or putting it in a savings account or into a stock market when the government really wanted you to spend it to help boost the economy. So there you go. There's Bitcoin in a nutshell. I've gone through everything, what it is, how it got made, who the guy is that founded it, and where is he now. It's kind of interesting. They should make a movie about that. But anyways, I think we have nothing but good times ahead for a little while yet. I think at some point there will be a pullback because you can't just grow exponentially to the moon. But I think we're still a ways away because we're only getting that early adoption now. And I think too many people are just starting to get into it. Too many corporations are going, crap, we're missing out. We got to get into this. So I think there's a lot of momentum still to happen. You're going to notice it's time to maybe jump out and wait for a pullback when you see the volume on Bitcoin going through the roof on the crypto exchanges. Because when you get that pandemonium, that FOMO, that fear of missing out, and everybody in your... Actually, when you go to your dentist or when you're getting your hair done, if you're a woman, and the hair salon person's talking about how they're in Bitcoin, everybody's in the cab, you get an Uber and the guy's talking about his Bitcoin, everybody's into it and it's time to probably jump out and wait for a pullback. It's here to stay in my mind, but yeah, if you see the charts, you're going to say, I think I missed the boat, but you haven't. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this video if you think it was helpful for you to understand what Bitcoin's all about and its possibilities going forward. The next episode is going to be even more exciting because it's going to show you how you buy it, what crypto exchanges I'm using, and when you do get your coin, what do you do with it? Does it just sit in your exchange, or do you put it on a cold storage wallet, or what? If you do leave it on exchange, can you make interest? You probably heard about that. You can make interest on your cryptocurrencies. And yes, you can. You can make very good interest. I remember I talked about there's the proof of work networks and there's the proof of stake networks. My favorite coin right now is Binance. I have most of my coins on the Binance exchange and I stake my Binance coins. And I'm presently making 16.5% interest by staking my Binance coins in terms of getting more Binance coins paid for staking my Binance coins. So you get more of a good thing. So it's very, very good, very exciting. And that'll be the next episode. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. So until next time, this is Craig signing off saying, ciao for now.